Okay, great. Well, first of all, welcome. Thank you so much to all of our attendees for zooming on over on this beautiful day to our first ever Clayworks webinar, first ever that I'm aware of. Many, many thanks to our panelists for lending us their time and being willing to share their studios with us. We decided to make this webinar. We put out a survey to our students, sort of just asking what students wanted or what people needed or how we could be of help. And one of the largest rates of response we got back was about setting up a home studio and how to do that and how to manage it. So we chose this wonderful group of panelists based on a variety of home studios, from Angie, who lives in a place with wall-to-wall carpeting and has managed to set up a temporary studio, to Matt, who invested a lot of time and energy into making a permanent home studio in his garage. Kind of the gamut of how to clay at home successfully. Just to cover a couple ground rules, so the panelists can see each other. We cannot see the attendees. I would love to, but we can't. It's just the nature of the Zoom webinar. So if you want to chat in the chat box, go ahead and go for it. You will notice at the bottom of your screen, there should also be a Q&A box. So if you have questions for our panelists, please type them into the Q&A and not the chat box. We will be monitoring the questions throughout the course of these presentations. And then at the end, we'll be looking for themes with them and answer as many questions as possible. I do want to thank Ariel for coming on and running tech for our webinar today. Thank you so much for your IT assistance. And then I also would not be doing my job if I didn't plug a donation. So I'm going to put the link to our donate page in the chat box. Certainly not required at all, but if you are interested in donating to the cause at the moment, you can do so there. I think I just sent it privately to Ariel. Thank you. Still working out the tech stuff. And we also have our online shop open and running with some wonderful work in there that we're shipping out twice a month. So that's another good way to support Clayworks during this time. We will be looking to you for guidance as to other ways that we can support you and our community while we get ready to reopen once we can do that safely. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to our first panelist, Ms. Mary Cloonan.
Okay, now I need to it or not. Ah, can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, so I will unmute.
I love technology. That's why we use clay, because you can hit it with a hammer. So this is my basement studio. I kind of have, I have my tool shelves and my little underglazes. This was like a little makeup caddy. It has all my like underglazes on it. I use just a mishmash of anything. A lot of it is stuff that I find on the curb. You know, there's like kitchen cabinets and shelving and old desks. So whatever I kind of need or can grab and will fit in and down the stairs is part of my studio. I also have a table in the backyard, and I also work on the porch when the weather's nice, kind of like today. But you know, it's a nice setup. It's sort of I miss, you know, the camaraderie, but it is also kind of nice just to kind of come down, get some things prepped, go back to some other chore, and then come and finish things up at all hours. I do have to contend with the cats that come and knock things down and walk over things and pee on things. But other than that, it's quite glamorous here in the basement. It's like I said, it's just like a hodgepodge. My carpentry skills are serviceable, but not quite, you know, keyed into being plumb. And oh, here. So in addition to the workspaces, I also have a whole like shelving unit of storage. So I have some my old sculptures, and then also just bits and pieces. I have some molds and slips and more underglazes are stored in there. But just, you know, I tend to fill space. So if the space is there, then I will make sure that it has some sort of art element in it so I can make things in addition to litter boxes. So again, glamorous, very glamorous. So clay positive.
All right.
We have one question in the chat box that says, I want to create a sink drainage system like at Clayworks. Can you give instructions on creating a sink and drainage system? Also would like to adapt my electric kiln like Scoot with 3 tiers and want to make it into a gas kiln. Any ideas using cone 6 clay and glazes? So there's your 2 questions in one.
Well, I think for the water bucket, I mean, Matt probably can talk to this system when he gets to his studio. I don't throw, so I don't have a lot of throw. I actually just have a bucket that I fill with water and wash, and then the bathroom's down here, so I'll just kind of let that go into the main sewer or pour it outside in the backyard. But like, you know, Matt probably has a better system if you're throwing. As for kilns and such, there's probably there's some good resources online, because if you're like, your kiln's gonna have like the soft brick, and so you might need to like ITC, like give a coating for that. I know that there are people who have, you know, transferred or, you know, changed their kiln from using the electric body to gas, but usually it's like a lower temperature than cone 6. But hey, it's a pandemic. Do what you want.
All right. Sorry, just typing into the chat. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mary. Like I said, we're going to get to the bulk of the questions at the end. So, you know, if you have a question that hasn't been answered, there are other panelists that might provide that in talking about their studios. But if not, we're making a bunch of notes so that we can address questions that aren't addressed in the presentations. So bear with us. We will get to your question. Let us just get through the couple other people's studios first. So our next artist is Mia Halton.
And please, if you do have questions, put them into the Q&A instead of the chat, just so they can be highlighted for us. Thank you. Mia, I am unmuting you now.
Okay. Hi, everybody. The most significant thing about my ceramic studio is how little it looks like one. When Baltimore Clayworks was undergoing its debacle not that long ago, I sort of started setting up a place to do hand building. I also am a hand builder, you know, like Mary. But you know, under duress from COVID, I've had to really figure it out. So what I'm doing is using the space that I use for basically all my work. And I do drawing. I'm essentially an installation artist. So it means that I could be coming in here and working on paper mache, or I could be using silk screen. I use the materials that I need to address my concept. So this space, my workspace, in so many ways needs to stay anonymous, even though obviously clay has its own considerations. So what I've done, and most of what I've done, unfortunately, the area of my basement where it is, the Wi-Fi is unstable, so I'm not going to go back in there. But I am, you know, I've got a big rolling pin, I've got clay, I've got table, I've got boards, I've got everything a happy hand builder could use, other than a kiln, of course. Or I'd love a slab roller too, but I'm not going to do that. It's not part of my purview. I am a springboard member at Baltimore Clayworks, so I count on Baltimore Clayworks for firings, and you know, I learn a lot on you know, through that, sort of being a part of Springboard that way. So in other words, I don't have a lot of so I'll just show you. I have a large behind me. You can see, I don't know, I do a lot of drawing. So this is my drawing area. It's right next to an area where I'm doing red clay. I have another area where I'm doing white clay. I'm using paper clay, white paper clay, and I'm using red clay, 104 and 417. And so I also am using the outdoors. You know, the clay is not the moisture content that I'd like it to be, so I'm going to be out there creating a slurry of both red and white. And my plan is to put canvas down onto my sidewalk and to pour it on there and just, you know, kind of work it that way and work it to the point at which it's just right. You don't see a lot of my work down here. It's essentially my little hand and row house is my studio. I have work all over the place, and I like, again, I like the anonymity of the space. I don't necessarily want to see my old work when I'm doing new work, especially since it's right upstairs. I like kind of an empty canvas, if you will. I believe there are always challenges with a ceramics studio or with a ceramics workspace. I mean, I've been a printmaker, painter, drawer all my life. And obviously I still draw. And somehow those seem a lot easier to me. But on the other hand, ceramics, you need a community. I need a community for my ceramics. I also my plan is to work larger. I've been doing, for a long time I've been making small work. And I really want to go larger. So I don't have a kiln right downstairs. I don't have Sam and Gary to help me get the work down there. So I'm going to be making it in pieces. And my friend Volker has a kiln that he's setting up, and I know now that I can bring work over to Baltimore Clayworks. So what I have is a simple hand building space with everything I need for that. I'm going to work outside to get the clay to the moisture content, and then I'll get it to a kiln. So it's pretty well set up. I haven't done a lot of work. I've actually struggled with COVID and had some, just feeling distracted by it and everything, but I'm well set up, I'm ready to go. And so I think that's it.
Thank you.
Great, Mia, thank you so much. All right, so next up is Matt Hyleck. He's going to share his studio.
Cool. So welcome. I've had this studio for 4 years now. I had the luxury of being a resident at Baltimore Clayworks for 16 years and saved. And when we bought this property, we bought it with the idea that we could renovate the garage to become a studio space, and was able to get that finished 4 years ago. So I've had the luxury of a space. I've got the luxury of plumbing. I've got the luxury of an electric kiln. And so it is well equipped. What I don't have is a gas kiln for finishing and firing the work. But I can, I'm going to spin the camera. I share this space with lawnmower, bicycles, power tools. But right now at the moment, okay, what I've got there, main entrance and sink area. And behind me here is my throwing space. And essentially it is square footage wise modeled off of my space that existed at the Clayworks studio for so many years. It's the same shelving layout, same wheel space, square footage wise. And so it gives me easy access shelving on both sides with ladder racks for sliding shelves in and out. And behind me, I have one plastic wrapped shelf, which is my damp box or dry box. And I can open that up. Okay, just so we can see the space. And again, the whole space is wrapped in plastic so that I don't have to wrap pots in process. You can see it's empty. I just did a bisque firing earlier this week. But essentially all of my reclaim buckets stay in there. I can allow them to evaporate and essentially slow dry the work inside of that space. And then behind me over here, I've got my bisqueware and my finished work shelving and the electric kiln in the corner. Okay, so this space, it was, we essentially gutted the garage. It is drywall everywhere. It's heavily insulated up top. Okay, so I've got both solar lights and I've got some flat LED lights in here. The electric kiln space has sheetrock, which is concrete board, so that there isn't any fire risk over here in the corner. So on both sides, the wall over here is concrete rather than drywall. And I think I saw a question earlier asking about sink plumbing. I think Mia spoke pretty nicely about the bucket situation and what to do with reclaim. I think that was my advice about 10 minutes before we started this to another student via email. Lay the canvas out and make your slurry, pour it out. If you've got a sidewalk space or a driveway space, that's the best solution. That way it's portable. What I use, spinning it back around this way, see if you can see that. I've got canvas, I've got a marble slab, and over here I do have a plaster table. I use all of those methods for doing my reclaim. Over here in my sink area, I'm going to set this down and see if folks can see it pretty plainly. It's a 5-gallon bucket. The plumbing has been cut and the exit where it leaves the building has been cut. And so essentially this works like a trap. It can fill up with sediment and the water separates out. The exit of the bucket is up high in the back And so the water can filter out into the plumbing. The heavy sediment can go to the bottom. We've really tried to be pretty intentional, pretty deliberate with never letting any water get in there. And so in my sink, I have a very sophisticated 2-gallon bucket. And so I do all my washing of tools in that bucket, washing of hands in that bucket, and then I dump that outside. So that way, hopefully nothing ever goes into that trap on the bottom. The trap's just there as a safety net. I think I got it.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So there was a question that came in specifically for you that
Okay.
we can address now.
Yeah.
Do you still have a garage door? Is your is your space insulated? And if so, how?
Yep. Fiberglass insulation, heavily insulated walls. It's a 2-story garage space. I do have, there's a crawl space up above, so that's where box storage is, and repair lumber for the house and all of the domestic projects. So that's all stored up in the crawl space. But I do have a garage bay, so I think to spin it back here, it is a garage door, and then we converted the second garage door to a standard entry. It's a heavily insulated garage door as well, so it's not a standard. And what I use for heat, believe it or not, that's it. It's just an oil radiator, and then behind me on the, you can see that's another heating unit or air conditioning unit. But I really only use, during the wintertime, I use that floor radiator, and that keeps the space above freezing. It can cycle on and off. And then when I want to come out to work in the space, I can turn on the wall unit, and very quickly it gets up to a very comfortable temp. But yeah, the other door as well, you know, it's got steel mesh on it, so it's secure. But essentially, that's a double pane door that I found down at Architectural Salvage, Second Chance. That's where I got the sink. I try to scrape together as many of these things as I can from salvage centers.
Great.
I see another question. Bucket system does not work. I can't see the rest of it.
I can read it to you.
Yeah.
Can you speak on the Clayworks PVC drain and sink with holes on PV pipe and slit collection and sink while water drains them?
Sure. I mean, it would just be deciding on the sink depth that you have. You would want to buy a PVC pipe that fits the drain opening you have. And the slots at the bottom of it are so the PVC can flex and give as you push it into the drain. But essentially, it should be a snug fit. And that way, it's designed so that it will, you want to cut that pipe obviously shorter than the depth of your sink, because otherwise it'll fill up and overflow under the floor. But it has to be a fairly deep sink basin in order to take that pipe. But it works, that's working the same, I think Shoshana's question, it's working the same as my bucket system underneath. You know, the idea is it fills to a point, sediment goes to the bottom, liquid exits. And there's another one. What's
So
that?
did you use a drill to make the holes?
In my 5-gallon bucket, yes.
Okay.
So I have a question.
And I also have, I have window screen. I'll take you back over to it. And I have window screen over the top of the exit drain as well, just because I was getting mosquitoes. But if you can see down in there, it's got a rubberized coating, and what you see on the backside with a zip tie around it is the exit point. I have cold water in the space only, so for hot water, I just use that.
So Matt, there's a question from Sue in Santa Fe that asking if your electric kiln has a vent or an exhaust system.
Hi, Sue in Santa Fe. There we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
And so it's a standard kiln vent. Standard L&L. And I keep my kiln log, keep all my posts, all my tests over in that corner, and my ladders. The other thing I found helpful, I try to, when I put everything into the space, I also had a new floor put in so it's smooth. And so I've got everything on wheels, and that way I can move things around and shuffle and expand or contract the space.
And then there was also a request for you to talk about your glazing area.
I don't have a glazing area. I need an art center to do my glazing. I've made a point not to do a lot of glaze work in this space just because of the issue that I've got still with water. Glazing involves so much rinsing. And for me, transport of Shino glazed work with ash, fresh ash on the surface, it would never survive the travel. So what I normally will do, I'll do my liner glazed work and wax work here in the studio, and then bubble wrap everything and transport to an art center for firing. And I do the finished glaze work at the center.
Great. We have one more question specifically for you that I think we have time for, and then we're going to move on. And
Yep.
This is from David. It says, you showed us your dry box. Do you get things dry enough in there so you don't have to candle in the kiln?
No. It is, because I'm not running heat, so I'm not trying to keep this space at a comfortable 68 degrees all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It does take an extended amount of time for things to dry. And so I will always do a preheat. I'll always make an effort to do a preheat in the kiln. And I've so far had good luck not blowing anything up, but I do about a 2-hour preheat. And I still, unless I'm in an exhibition crunch, things stay in the dry box or in the damp box, and then I transition them over. Sorry, again, to get up. So from here, it's just work in process where I can do the assembly, and then I transfer over to this shelf for drying. And work will stay on the drying shelf for probably a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks before I look for a bisque fire. If I'm working faster than that, I think this last firing that I did in February, just before COVID, what I wound up doing is I made some pieces and I just propped them up against my radiator overnight, and that way I could load them into the bisque kiln the next day.
Great. All right.
Thank
Our
you.
next panelist is Angelique Scott.
Oh, am I muted?
There you are.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Angie. So I am one of the mezzanine artists at I do not have a studio at home, and I am a wheel thrower. So I've been experimenting with hand building, and that has been a challenge. So I am just going to share my screen to show you exactly what this makeshift space I've set up looks like. So if everyone can see this, this is on my back balcony, and I use this space if I have to do any like intense carving where it's going to be a lot of like debris and stuff on the floor, because my apartment, if it'll let me go to the next photo, is entirely carpet, and I have rugs and everything, and so I've kind of had to figure out a way to still be able to make work without a wheel. And so one of the important things was having a tarp. So this is half of a tarp. The other half was the one that was outside on the balcony, so that I can at least try and collect some of it. And this is a wood board if I have to do like any small slabs or anything like that where I might need a hard surface. And this is a tray with some plastic wrap so that I can keep whatever I make wet enough to keep working on it until I'm finished. I'm actually sitting on this couch right now, and this is in my bedroom. So it's a small space, so I don't have a lot of work, but it was also really important for me to have great lighting. So I have a huge window in that room that I'm able to open to as like a makeshift ventilation system of some sorts. And then I realized that I needed more space to work, and the banding wall that was on this stool wasn't going to be enough, as you can see. So I went to the store, and I knew this was an investment because this ladder was about $60, but the board was only $6. So if you don't need something like that and you really just need a board, a hard surface that you can work on that's wood, so when you lay things down and you need them to dry out, the wood will kind of absorb some of that moisture. This was $6. This heavy duty tarp right here that's 6 foot by 8 foot was about $2. And so what I did was put it all together to make this makeshift table space with the tarp under it that I could work on. This is also by the door that slides out to the balcony, and I have a window up here as well for light and to let some air in. And these are flat, I call them bungee cords, but just to hold down the board to this ladder so that I can use it. And then I added canvas cloth, which you can also get from Lowe's or Home Depot, and I cut that up to make a canvas side of my makeshift table if I need to work on, but I did want to leave most of it so that I can sit pieces on there to dry out. And I have like this little carpet that I can sit on, so it's kind of comfy. This is in my living room space, so that is kind of how I am making work right now. Yeah, and it's been working. I think some of the challenges have definitely been reclaim. Kind of lucky that I don't have a wheel at home because I don't have that much reclaim to worry about. And I try to save small pieces that I trim off as much as I can. If it is still soft, I will just put it back in the bag and add some water and keep it wet. But I do have to think about my size and the quantity of work I make. So if I'm working with molds, I don't want to make too many so that it's overflowing since I don't have a lot of space. So I do have to be mindful about that and clean up. I have to be a little bit more cautious and careful as opposed to if I were in a studio and I can just kind of like add or like wet mop or wet sweep. I can't really do that in this space since I don't have that ventilation system. So I am really cautious about those things and not letting my trimmings build up and stuff like that. But it's working so far. So.
Great. I think that is so impressive. Thank you. It's amazing. I'm really, really happy that you've been able to keep making work. And it looks like the scale of that sculpture is kind of large. Yeah.
On the stool, stools have been my best friend as far as like getting something up to where it's almost eye level if I'm sitting down so I can work on it. So that was great. I don't have a table, so.
Great, thank you. Another couple questions, but they're kind of in general, so we're gonna save them till the end. Our next panelist is the man that needs no introduction, Mr. Samuel Wallace. Wait 1 second, there you go.
Okay. I'm Sam Wallace. A resident, a staff member, and a teacher at Baltimore Clayworks. Now, as you can see, the technique that I use, I don't need a lot of space, but working at home, all you have to do is to make yourself a little space. Now, if you're working on a wheel, you will run into more problem than if you're doing hand building. Wherever I'm in my basement in the wash area, all I do, I have myself a table. This table you're looking at right here. This little table I have, and then I have two shelves over here. One shelf here and one down there. That's all I have. As you can see, it is very clean right now. All the work has moved to Baltimore Clayworks yesterday, so all the dry work gone over there. Now, for hand building, I'm doing slab and coil. Now, for my slab building, it is very easy just to have this table to work on. And for folks who doing coil building, you just need a table. Now, the coil building that I do, you have to do a dance. And for that, you need a little room. So because of that, I can't do none of that at home right now so much, unless I had to go upstairs and steal a little place from them in the living room. But I had to wait until everybody gone to bed before I could do that. But in the daytime, I make myself comfortable. All you need a table. You need to have some burlap. And if you're ever working in the kitchen or in a little part in your dining room, all you have to do, get a piece of canvas, put it down on the floor, tack it down. Because if you don't tack it down, you're going to move up and down, and then you're going to cause problem. Everybody going to hate you in the house for clay. Because clay have his mark. It show up. So you got to protect yourself, whatever clay you're using, to do that. So all you need, a table, all your tools, everything, the storage is right under the table where everything kept. And as for me, as the two shelves filled, I had to move them out. I can't do large scale of work here, which, I do some tall pieces, very tall and, wide. But in the slab, you can make a lot of cups and small vases and some trays, and some press mold work. So what happened is that when you're at home working, as long as you can make yourself room, I got I'm working next to the, as you can see, that's the outside in the back. And if you have a tent and you have a wheel and you don't have room in your house, you can put your wheel under the tent outside, cover your clay, but it is a good place to throw on the wheel on the outside because the air will help you on the wheel, okay? It'll help you to stabilize your clay more. So you can work outside also in the back. So if we had to stay home longer, and I had to do a little wheel work, then I'm going to have to put up a little shed outside, a little tent, and get underneath it to work. For instance, in your home, you do not want to make clay go into the sink. So earlier on, you hear about the 5-gallon bucket. You need a 5-gallon bucket. And pour everything in that 5-gallon bucket. It will settle to the bottom, and later on, you can siphon off the water off of it, and then you can use the reclaim. It's very simple. You can do that. You can get a canvas, put it outside, put the reclaim on it outside, and the wind will help you dry it up, and you will be able to do that. So working at home is not a big problem. It's just a little space. And as long as you can control the area that you're in, because I share my area down here with the people that I'm in the little wash area, because I know I'm here temporary for a while. So, it make it easier for me to just do everything. Most likely in my house, I can have a whole lot of noise when my grandkids and the grandmother upstairs taking care of them, then there's a whole lot. I had to hide myself. So that's why the little basement here is good for me. And I stay here, I create a lot. If it was last week, you would see a few dozen cups and things and trays we have that's created right here on this little space. I got a 20 by 16 piece of canvas on the table, and that's worked well with everything. I catch everything. I don't drop a lot of clay because, as you know, I hardly work with water unless I'm washing my hand, and when I'm smoothing out my slab. Is the less thing you use and the less thing I do. But at home working, make yourself a little bit. And for those who in Baltimore around us, they are very fortunate because what happened is they got us to do the firing for them and everything. So, you know, they are able to get their work through to me. You don't have to let it stay home until it dry. They can bring it to me. And then, you know, they get a little room. Like me now, I had to move mine out because 2 shelves. And if I'm producing, I can fill that 2 shelves in a few hours. So for that, working at home, make yourself what you do, the type of work you do, get yourself a small space, create a lot of work as you can. You have help over at Baltimore Clayworks. And for those who don't have a kiln, we have a kiln. And if you have a kiln at home and if you have a wooden floor, it is best for you to go and get yourself the cement board to put underneath the bottom. If you want to put that, just put that on the floor, set the kiln on top of it, and you're well protected. There's many different vents you can have to vent your kiln outside. And it's a good if you have a back, the basement, near to the basement in the back, or you got a carport, you could put up a kiln in a carport. And as long as you have it 12 inches off the wall, you are pretty safe to go. So the kiln, the small kiln that you want to have, that is feasible for you to do, and you can work at home. All right, so you don't need a big space. If you're gonna make a studio, then you're gonna need a lot of equipment to get that thing ready. But if you just need a little space, get one just like mine, and you can do all the work.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. So a couple questions. Probably a good one for you, Sam. Can you repair a plaster wedging tabletop when it starts to release pieces of plaster into the clay?
Now, you need to put in a new set of plaster, because when you patch that, it's just gonna serve for a little while and it's gonna start lift up again.
Mm-hmm. So is a concrete wedging table better than a plaster one?
Yeah. No, a plaster is good because it helps you dry out the clay.
Okay.
So the plaster wedging table, you just replace, just take out the old plaster and pour new plaster. That's much easier.
And a question that came up earlier, and I don't think it got answered. What does it take to convert an electric kiln to a gas one?
Oh no, that take a lot.
Yeah.
That take a lot, because you have to enter from the bottom of the kiln. So you would have to cut out maybe 2, 3, depends on how much burner you're gonna put underneath it, how big the kiln is. You know, you may need 2 burners, so you're gonna have to cut out 2 holes under the bottom of the kiln. That's the only way you can convert an electric kiln. You have to enter from the bottom. They used to make the kiln like that in gas. Oh, and we have one for sale, you know that. We have a gas kiln just make like electric, just like that. We got one for sale. So if you are interested in that, see us. Mm-hmm.
So Anne Margaret says, long ago in the downstairs classroom at Clayworks, the sink had 2 wells and it seemed like a long metal tube stuck in the drain of one well. Did we also have a trap under that sink? I thought the
there's a big trap is under that sink. Okay. But that's trap large material, because that large material go down, and sometimes clay go in there too. And it helps to trap the clay that goes through. And you know, on the floor, things can bounce and roll over in there and block it. So there's a trap underneath that sink. Each one of those sinks you see we have there, there's a big trap. We have some new commercial trap, and the old sink that used to be there, they're the grill, like a grill is in there that catch the large stuff that we scoop out all the time.
Thank you.
That's the one that called the floor trap. The floor trap.
This is I just did a quick drawing of how the pipes are in the sinks at Clayworks. You know, so it's like you can like that way the cleanest water goes out, but then you still have to like bail it out and scoop out the sludge.
After a while.
Yeah, but it's also the one where like the kids, oh, hi, Calvin, where the kids will pull out the pipes and then you have the...
We got a flood. We got a flood. So that's one of the first instruction you give to a summer camp. Whatever you do, do not touch this.
Sink demons. Sam, is that how you keep your grandkids out of the basement? You just tell them it's haunted?
Oh no, I had to close the middle door. When I closed the middle door, but if they even find out, the bigger one open it and they flood down here. So everything had to stop at that time.
All right, so there's a question for you, Sam, from Sue.
Mm-hmm.
It says, what about using an electric kiln with saggers? Fill those saggers with different materials to get atmospheric effects. Will this pretty much wreck the kiln for regular electric firing?
Yes, it will. It will.
Okay.
It will. So that's why when you do saga in a kiln like that, that kiln just gone to that. It's not for electric use anymore.
Yeah, the carbon will wreck the elements.
Mm-hmm.
If she is interested, she should look up James Watkins. He teaches down in Texas, and he does a lot of sagger fire, and he has some instructions on like using the metal popcorn tins with combustibles in the kilns. But I know that he also has his kilns out in a carport, and he's, you know, you have to replace the elements and things. It's invent and make sure you're not using galvanized containers.
No, we're galvanized to melt.
Yeah, I think the conversation about conversion of an electric kiln, essentially you're making, it's an updraft rather than a downdraft kiln. Right. You would also have to drill a hole and put a chimney stack on the lid, and then come up with a damper plate system as a way to keep the heat in the kiln so that you can make it even. There are some articles that exist about conversion for an electric shell into a, if anybody wants to reach out, I can look for those articles and email them to you. There are some articles that exist about conversion to an updraft soda kiln. I know Rich Holt over at Towson University did some pretty extensive play converting one of those kilns and testing. And I know they were getting early on some pretty interesting results, but cone temperature within a small 24-inch kiln was varying between 2 and 6, depending on top shelf, bottom shelf. So without a damper plate system, you're going to get a really hot top and a really cold bottom.
Yep. Yeah, you got to damper down.
Yep.
Yep.
So we had a question about dropping off greenware for firing. That is something.
Name, information on the container, and the table they are underneath the wood kill shelf. So you have to bring it to the wood kill shelf with your name and information. Leave it right there. Call, because they have my number. Call when you're gonna come in, and I'll let you know what time you can get there and drop them off, which day, and stuff like that. It's not an everyday thing.
So just in addition to that, you know, in the next few weeks, we're going to be we're starting to look at additional resources that we can offer you, things like wheel rentals, just, you know, potentially limited studio access as soon as we start to open up, as soon as we can do it safely. So we're going to be compiling a list of resources and services that we can offer you as a community safely. Sorry. I get distracted by my 3-year-old sometimes.
It's all right.
It's right here. Can you have an electric kiln outside without weather problems?
Not outside. It got to cover that. It got to undercover.
Moisture will be an issue if it's outside. You would want it to be in some type of a shed to keep moisture out of the electrical and out of the soft brick.
So it got to be a covering. It have to be a covering. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it's got to be under some type of a roof. I have seen plenty of kiln patios or kiln sheds where the electric kiln was essentially exposed to humidity, but not exposed to rain. And those situations work just fine.
Yep.
But it will shorten the life of a kiln.
Oh yeah, because the type of element, that's one of the main things too. The type of the element. The element, when it contract moisture, everything go bad real fast.
So I have a question kind of for all the panelists, and it's really, I don't know why it's a sensitive question, but only if you're comfortable talking about it. What sort of investment did you make in your at-home studio? Were you able to set it up for $50? Did it cost multiple thousands? Just, you know, just give people a ballpark of what it would take them financially to get set up and get going. So we've seen a whole gamut of studio spaces today. Or you don't have to tell us that.
I mean, I'm really thrifty, so I'm a lot of the furniture I either made from scrap woods and countertops. I have like 2 old desks that I use to hold like my tools, and my tools are in there. Old bookshelves, and like I have friends whose parents were remodeling and they gave me their old cabinets. So it's like a real mishmash, excuse me, lady, of you know, just, you know, like the neighbors moved and I took their china cabinet apart and I put that in the basement, and that's my bookcase because I have glass now that keeps the dust off my books. So I have there's an old wardrobe that has some things in it, and then this still has clothes in it, but my idea is that I'm going to turn this into a damp cabinet because it's, you know, it's all vinyl inside once I get my prom dresses out of it. But yeah, no, it's a lot of I always had a big vehicle, so I did a lot of good curbside finds.
You are the queen of the upcycle, I have to say.
Yeah, I ain't fancy.
Matt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fancy.
Yeah,
That's fancy.
mine is fancier. I had essentially, it's like I was expecting Mary to borrow a David McDonald phrase there and say took, you know, cumulative of 20 years plus 5 minutes, something like that, Mary.
Yeah.
That's the entire decor of my house.
Yeah, so while I was a resident at Clayworks, at the old house, I had a small workspace. There was a table in the basement, a single shelf, and an old wheel in the basement. And that's where I would do some studio work in addition to working at the Clayworks studio. But I didn't have a kiln. That was the laundry room. And I found I could only work small from home because the challenges of transport anywhere with a large scale work. I wound up damaging too many things. but I would like Mary would squirrel things away in the garage until the day that I could have a physical studio space that I could build. And I just saved lots of money. I mean, my studio, when we took bids, and it involved, it involved hiring a contractor to do the plumbing and the electrical panel work, completely stripping the outside of the building and the inside of the building down to the framework, and then rebuilding it. The price estimates that I got ranged between $35,000 and $60,000 just to do that space, complete with a new floor. So it was not, what we spent is just short of $35,000 to do it. So it was not cheap.
Yep.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions for our panelists? We're gonna wrap this up at 5. So any more Q&A, commentary, chit chat? Anything else?
I do have, it wasn't actually a question, but I know we talked about it before. As far as reclaim for someone like me who doesn't really have a space, but is trying to make a space. So if I had some things to reclaim, I know that you guys mentioned like pillowcases, and I've seen Sam at the studio do pillowcases to kind of dry the clay out to reuse them if you don't have like a plaster or anything to sit them on. So if anyone has any kind of makeshift things, any tips?
Go ahead, Mary.
I don't do the whole slake it down slurry and let it dry thing. I use the clay bag, and I have a 1-gallon bucket. And so I just put all my scraps in there and spray it down, and then once the bucket, the 1-gallon bucket is full, I just kind of twist it. I let the water sit and kind of like make everything soft, and then I put it on the ground and I flatten it, and then I kind of fold it, open the bag. I have a whole little like PDF on this, but I just use the bag and get things back to a plastic state and then wedge it back that way. So rather than having to have a big thing of slurry, I just have like my 1-gallon like little bucket and a lid for that. And then once it's full, then I just kind of let that set. And that's what I use in my classrooms too, because I don't have a pug mill at school, and it's, I just have like 3 different buckets for each clay body, but it keeps it contained, and it also kind of keeps you on top of it, because sometimes if you just have like a 5-gallon bucket full of slurry, you're like, I'll recycle, and then it just
Never.
Yeah, it just becomes it becomes it's a new stool for you to put your standing wheel on. So yeah, I could even post, because it's I guess on the Clayworks website, like the pictures and the how-to that I use for my class, because I made posters for the girls to ignore and just leave things out on the wedging table to dry. So, but I can send that to Sarah to get posted for like a home studio something or other.
That's great. Yeah, I think that porch, I think doing it outdoors is an important thing to emphasize, so you can really minimize the dust. Using canvas or a pillowcase so that you can rotate the outside edges in and keep the material turning so that the edges don't get too stiff. Even on a plaster board, you've got to do that, where you turn the material from the outside to the inside. But it is one of those, I think, trying to mitigate the amount of material that gets all the way to dry so that you don't have a mountain of 5-gallon buckets. I still have 5-gallon buckets full of reclaim going in my space. I'm constantly turning it around, so.
Mine's all wedged up and ready to go.
Mine's not.
Why
you have children?
But that is why they when you use the bag, when you use the bag that comes in. That is so good. You know, because you don't let a whole, as Matt said, you don't let a whole lot get dry. And the best way, you know, if you're gonna be home for the day, if you put it out back on the porch, I guarantee you can wedge it up later on. You just got a little piece of canvas and out there, because I wedge mine on the floor. You know, I just wipe off the floor and wedge mine on the floor. Just put it out back, the breeze blow on it, take it up, wedge it up, and you're gone again.
Yeah,
So,
I think you can do it on a wooden board too if you have a sheet of plywood.
That's right.
You can lay wood out on them. I mean, the idea is something porous.
Right.
So anything that you can put out, I think having that, the outside space, and you reclaim in a quantity that you can control. So it can be 5 pounds at a time or 25 pounds at a time. What I find, a 5-gallon bucket gives me about 35 pounds of material. So.
Mm-hmm. And then, like, I just have a small, it's a hardy back, it's a backer board.
Yep.
Like for mosaics, and I just have a small one of these that once I kind of let it get to a dry state, then I can just wedge it up. And I mean, this or a board is great, and it's, you know, tiny.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I saw a question there about something, but I didn't understand it. Does Clayworks carry?
Makasavi?
What?
McCasoy?
Nope.
Oh.
Nah.
No, but there's a lot of mica around in this, you know, if you drive the Falls way, you could, you know, mine it.
Yeah, micaceous.
Yes. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, that's a Southwest product. I think New Mexico or Arizona.
And you had to dig a lot of local clay. You could find that too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where's
Sam
your
will
spot,
tell you where it goes up.
All right, so it's a little bit after 5, so we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank all of our panelists again for sharing your time with us and your spaces and your pros and cons and all of your wonderful insights into clay at home. And I really want to thank our participants for zooming on over. I just want to remind you that, you know, your health and safety is our first priority, but your creative inspiration and growth is our job. That's our whole job. And we're trying our best to do it during this time. And so you know where to find staff contact on our website. I would say, please reach out to us. Let us know what we can do. Let us know how we can support you during this time. We're all working and we're all sort of navigating this new phase. We do have a task force in place to address reopening protocol and how we're going to do that. So I don't have any answers for you on that at the moment, but as that starts to come together, we'll make sure that we make you aware of it. And we'll make you aware of new resources that we're making available as they become available. But please, please, please get in touch with me, get in touch with any of us on staff, and let us know what you want to do, what we can do remotely. Any suggestion is a good one. We're here to help you. So I think that's it. Does anyone else have anything to say in conclusion?
Just clay positive.
Clay positive.
Oh.
That's so true.
It
Thank you,
is.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Cindy.